They thought I was invisible. Just another waitress walking around with a fake smile and a tray full of dirty glasses. They didn't know the truth. They didn't know that one moment, one single action, was about to turn the entire room upside down. That night, I learned something important. When people underestimate you, their laughter becomes the loudest applause once the tables turn. And believe me, the tables turned in a way no one could have predicted. By the way, if you enjoy stories about betrayal, revenge, and shocking twists, don't forget to subscribe, like, share, and drop a comment. I can't wait to hear what you think about this one. It started on a Friday evening. The kind of evening where the restaurant was packed, and every table buzzed with laughter, chatter, and clinking glasses. I had worked there for almost 4 years, long enough to know every regular by name, every menu item by heart, and every shortcut to keep the place running when things got messy. My name is Emily Carter, and I wasn't just a waitress. But to the group sitting at table 7 that night, I was nothing more than someone in an apron who carried food and drinks. I remember the exact moment it happened. I walked over to table 7 with a tray of cocktails balanced in one hand. A group of 4 women were seated there, all dressed like they'd just come from some luxury boutique. One of them, a woman named Vanessa, leaned back in her chair, staring at me like I was something stuck to the bottom of her shoe. "Excuse me," she said loudly enough for nearby tables to hear. "Could you bring me another napkin? This one feels cheap." Then again, what else should I expect? She's just a waitress. The word hit harder than it should have. Just a waitress. I heard a few people chuckle. My face burned, but I kept my smile. Years of working in customer service had trained me to swallow insults with a smile, but inside I was boiling. I handed her the napkin and said, "Of course, ma'am. Right away." She smirked and rolled her eyes at her friends. One of them whispered something, and they all laughed. I walked away pretending not to hear, but every laugh sliced through me. Here's what they didn't know. This restaurant wasn't just a place where I worked, it was my second home. And in a way it was already mine. The owner, Mr. Reynolds, had been like a mentor to me. He always told me I had potential, that I wasn't just good with customers but good with business. I knew how to manage chaos, how to keep staff motivated, how to keep people coming back. He'd once told me, "Emily, when I retire, I want someone who truly loves this place to take over. Someone who treats it like family. And you're the only one I trust with that." But of course Vanessa and her friends didn't know that. As I walked back into the kitchen, I could still hear their laughter echoing in my head. For a moment I thought about quitting right then and there. Walking out the back door, leaving my apron on the counter, and never looking back. But then I remembered something my mom always used to say. Patience is the sharpest form of revenge. Let them underestimate you, one day you won't need words. Your success will speak louder than anything they say. And that night her words became reality. Because what Vanessa didn't know was that Mr. Reynolds had been planning something huge. He was hosting a dinner party at the restaurant that night. Not just for friends but for potential investors. It was supposed to be his official announcement that he was retiring. And he had already told me privately. He was handing over the restaurant to me. That's right. Me. The just a waitress. When the moment came, Vanessa and her friends were about to learn that mocking someone based on an apron was the biggest mistake of their lives. But let me take you through everything that led up to that moment. Because the way the truth came out, it wasn't just shocking. It left the entire restaurant frozen in silence. The sound of laughter from table 7 followed me into the kitchen. Like a shadow I couldn't shake off. I placed the tray on the counter a little harder than I should have, and one of the cooks, Marcus, raised his eyebrows. "Rough table?" he asked. I forced a smile. You could say that. But inside I was replaying Vanessa's words over and over. Just a waitress. That phrase kept ringing in my ears like a bell I couldn't silence. I poured water into glasses, grabbed a fresh set of silverware, and steadied my breathing before heading back out. I'd learned to mask frustration, but tonight felt different. Tonight wasn't just another shift. Tonight was the night Mr. Reynolds would make his big announcement. The restaurant had a different kind of energy. The air buzzed with anticipation, and I noticed unfamiliar faces at the corner table. Men in suits, women in elegant dresses. They weren't regulars. These were investors, people who looked like they lived in boardrooms and country clubs. And there, sitting at the head of the table, was Mr. Reynolds himself. A kind smile spread across his face when he caught my eye, and he gave me a subtle nod. That small gesture reminded me why I hadn't walked out tonight. Vanessa's words didn't matter. Her laughter didn't matter. Because soon the truth would speak louder than any insult. But still, it was hard to ignore her. When I brought their entrees out, she leaned forward and whispered loudly enough for me to hear. "Careful with that tray. It looks heavier than her entire paycheck." Her friends laughed again, sipping on cocktails like queens in a cheap play. I smiled through it. "Enjoy your meal." As I walked away, my hands trembled. Not from anger anymore, but from the effort it took to keep the secret I carried. If only she knew. The evening moved quickly. Plates clinked, glasses refilled, and conversations blurred together. The investors' table was full of chatter, and Mr. Reynolds occasionally glanced my way, giving me the kind of look only a proud mentor could. And then the moment came. Mr. Reynolds stood, tapping his glass with a spoon. The sound cut through the chatter, and the restaurant hushed. Even Vanessa and her friends paused their gossip to look at him. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, "thank you all for being here tonight. This restaurant has been my life for over 30 years. I've watched it grow from a tiny cafe into the place you see today. And tonight, I want to share something important with all of you." The room leaned in. "I've decided it's time to retire," he said, his voice steady but emotional. "But more importantly, I've decided who will carry this restaurant into the future. Someone who isn't just an employee, but someone who has poured her heart and soul into this place." He paused, and I swear I could feel Vanessa's smirk from across the room. She probably thought he was about to introduce his son, or a business partner in a fancy suit. But then he said my name. "Emily Carter." The sound echoed through the restaurant like a thunderclap. Conversations froze mid-sentence. Forks stopped halfway to mouths. Even Vanessa's laugh caught in her throat. I stood there, rooted to the floor, my tray still in hand. Mr. Reynolds continued. "Emily has been more than just a waitress here. She's been the backbone of this restaurant. She knows every customer, every detail, every challenge we've faced. And when I thought about who could carry this place forward, the answer was clear. Tonight, I'm proud to announce that Emily will be the new owner of Reynolds Bistro." Applause erupted. Investors clapped, regulars cheered, and for a moment I couldn't move. My heart pounded so loudly I could barely hear anything else. But I did hear one thing. The sound of silence from table 7. I turned slowly toward Vanessa. Her eyes were wide, her jaw slack, and for the first time all night, she had nothing to say. Her friends exchanged nervous glances, their smug smiles wiped clean. And in that instant I felt something I couldn't describe: relief, vindication, power. But most of all I felt calm. Because finally the laughter wasn't on me. It was on them. Yet the night didn't end there. After the applause settled, Mr. Reynolds gestured for me to come forward. My legs felt heavy, but I walked to the front of the room, each step echoing louder than the last. When I reached him, he placed a small velvet box in my hand. "Emily," he said softly but firmly, "these are the keys. You've earned them." I looked down at the keys, then back at the crowd. My hands shook, but not from nerves this time. From the weight of the moment. The room erupted in cheers again, and I glanced once more at Vanessa. Her face had gone pale, her smugness shattered like glass. But the real twist? That was still to come. Because what Vanessa didn't know was that her insult had done more than humiliate me. It had sealed her own fate. You see, Vanessa wasn't just some random customer. She had a connection to this place, one she thought no one knew about. And soon the truth about her would surface. A truth that would flip her entire world upside down. For a long second, the restaurant buzzed with applause and congratulations. My ears rang with it, but my eyes stayed locked on table 7. Vanessa sat frozen, her fork halfway to her plate, her lips parted as if words had been stolen right out of her mouth. The same woman who had laughed at me, mocked me, called me just a waitress, was now staring at me like she'd seen a ghost. And in a way she had. Because the Emily she thought she knew, the one in an apron taking orders, was gone. But the night wasn't over. Mr. Reynolds clapped me on the shoulder. Say a few words, he whispered. I swallowed hard, my throat tight. The whole room was watching, waiting for me to speak. My knees trembled, but I steadied myself. Thank you, I began, my voice soft but clear. This restaurant has been my home for years. I've given it my time, my energy, and my heart. And tonight I feel like all of that has been worth it. I paused, looking around the room. My eyes brushed past the investors, the regulars, the staff, and landed squarely on Vanessa. Her face had drained of color. I held her gaze for just a moment longer than necessary. I've learned something important working here, I continued. It doesn't matter if people call you just anything. Just a waitress. Just a student. Just a dreamer. What matters is what you build, what you fight for, and what you refuse to give up on. And sometimes the people who laugh the loudest are the ones who end up the most shocked. The room erupted in applause again, but this time I didn't flinch. I smiled. And Vanessa looked like she wanted to crawl under the table. After the announcement, I went back to the kitchen for a breather. My hands gripped the counter as I exhaled, trying to take in everything that had just happened. But then I heard it. A hiss of an argument just outside the door. Vanessa's voice. What do you mean she owns the place? That's not possible. My uncle told me. She stopped abruptly, lowering her voice. But I caught the words. My uncle. My blood ran cold. Suddenly, the missing puzzle piece clicked into place. Vanessa wasn't just a rude customer. She was related to one of the investors. Her uncle, apparently, was one of the men Mr. Reynolds had invited tonight. And she had been so sure the restaurant would end up in her family's hands that she felt untouchable. That explained everything. Her smugness, her entitlement, her mockery. She didn't see me as competition because in her mind she was already connected to the future of this place. But now the future was mine. And she couldn't stand it. When I stepped back out, Vanessa was still arguing in hushed tones with her uncle, a red-faced man in a navy suit. He looked embarrassed, glancing around nervously as guests whispered. Clearly, her outburst wasn't part of the polished image he wanted to project. Then, something I'll never forget happened. As I walked by, Vanessa stood up, blocking my path. This isn't fair, she spat, her voice trembling with rage. You don't deserve this place. You're just a... Her uncle grabbed her arm, hissing. Vanessa, sit down. But she shook him off. No. She humiliated me. Do you know who I am? The room went dead silent. Every eye turned toward her. And before I could even respond, Mr. Reynolds stood. His expression calm but firm. Yes, Vanessa, he said. We all know who you are. And tonight we also know who Emily is. The owner. Then he turned to me and with a small bow, yes, a bow, he said, Congratulations, Emily. This place couldn't be in better hands. The investors followed his lead. One by one they stood, nodding, clapping, and even offering their own congratulations. And Vanessa? Her face went pale as chalk. Her bravado evaporated. She sat down slowly, her eyes darting between me and her uncle, who looked like he wanted the floor to swallow him whole. It was the most satisfying silence I had ever heard. The rest of the evening flew by in a blur. People congratulated me, shook my hand, and asked about my plans for the restaurant. I answered as best as I could, but my mind kept drifting back to Vanessa's stunned expression. For years she had probably walked through life looking down on people like me. People who wore aprons, who worked long shifts for little pay, who smiled even when mocked. But tonight proved something she never expected. The person she underestimated most was the one holding the keys to everything she thought she deserved. Later that night, when the restaurant emptied and the last table was cleared, I locked the front doors. The keys jingled in my hand, and I stared at them for a long moment. These weren't just keys. They were proof. Proof that hard work speaks louder than mockery. Proof that dignity always wins over arrogance. Proof that patience really is the sharpest revenge. I smiled to myself, whispering, not just a waitress anymore. And maybe that's the lesson in all of this. When people try to define you with the word, just let them. Because one day you'll define yourself with something so much bigger, and their laughter will turn into stunned silence. Thank you for listening to my story. If you've ever been underestimated or mocked, I'd love to hear about it in the comments. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, because more stories like this are coming, and trust me, you won't want to miss them.